In this lesson, we're going to learn how to animate a few basic effects. So we're going to start by looking at how to animate fire. So, fire behaves much like a fluid. You can think of a fire as a flag stuck in a river and is being pulled and pushed around by the rolling waves. So if you keep this in mind while you animate your fire, it will help you a lot to convey a natural movement. So there's a few things we want to keep in mind when we do our animation. The first being the hot air generated by the fire itself. And the second thing being the cold air above and around the flame. So the hot air and the cold air comes together and creates turbulence. And it's this turbulence that comes together and creates the characteristic rolling movement of the flame. So what's happening is that the cold air is coming from above and it's rolling over the hot air generated by the flame. And when that happens, we get this kind of curving that we see here. Because the heat is rising, the cold air, like a liquid, flows over the hot air and curves in under. And that's why we get this kind of wave motion and these holes in our flame. And another thing to keep in mind is when we do a flame like this, we can break it down as a simple wave motion. So something like this. And this is caused by this turbulence, rolling and kind of bending this wave. So now we looked at how to think about the movement of the flame. It rolling in a river and flapping back and forth like a flag or a classical wave motion. And to make sure that we keep our volume solid when we animate a flame, we can break the flame down into these larger volumes, traveling in a wave motion from the fuel source, like this. So they start out down here, small, and then they travel upward and gain size quite fast, and then they slowly get smaller as they dissipate. So now I'm going to walk you through how I would go ahead and animate this. So here we have the style frame I'll be using. And here I have traced the major layers. So we got our stick, we got the main pass, and then we have a shading pass. And when I animate effects or anything that has multiple layers, I like to do one layer at a time. So I'm gonna hide this shading pass for now, and we're just gonna look at the main flame. As per usual, I will animate this on twos. Sometimes I do effects animation on ones. It kind of depends on what kind of look you're going for. But keep in mind that animating on ones will always be twice as much work. I'm gonna go ahead and go to my second drawing here, and I'm gonna turn on onion skinning. So now we can see the frame before. And then I'm gonna go ahead and start drawing my first lines. So we have the wave motion going this way. And then we also have a motion here. So I want to think of these masses traveling upwards. So same as I did here, for any part that looks like this, that has these kind of spikes that we see in flames, I think of it as a wave motion. So it will bend towards where it came from, like this. And then we will look at these parts later. And then down here, I'm gonna give this a bit of life by making the bottom here kind of bob up and down a bit. So I'm putting my lines quite close to where they were. So I'm gonna make the movement down here quite erratic compared to the main behavior following the wave motion. So let's go to our next frame. And now down here, I want to introduce that turbulence cutting in. And we wanna do this because it will help us, as the flame is burning, cut away these larger pieces like we see here, and the piece that's soon gonna be cut off up here. So now here, because this part here is reaching the top of the flame, I want to start cutting in even more here. And then the idea for the next frame here is that this piece here is gonna fly away on its own. And down here, I'm gonna keep doing this small erratic bobbing. And here I'm gonna keep this traveling upwards. And then we're doing the wave motion. And also down here now I want to introduce a bit of this turbulence by cutting in. So this is what we have. And here you can see the volumes traveling upwards. And you can see the wave motion here. So now for the next drawing, I'm gonna make this part here kind of flick over. So I'm gonna make it pretty fast. And then this part here now will cut off. Like this. So now the flame is going back this way. So it's traveling. So it's traveling like this. And I'm gonna cut in even more here. And the same here. And as you can see here now, we're introducing another part of the wave motion here. So it goes back in and then it goes out. And then I'm gonna make this next drawing down here go down. This one can go up. So now we can see we have a main wave motion. And then down here we have kind of a bobbing up and down. Then now for my next drawing here, the wave motion will kind of go like this. And now on this part here, because it's getting a bit too round, I want to start adding some more details here. So I'm gonna keep going with the turbulence here. And then here I'm gonna introduce some more details. So the good part with fire is that we can introduce details and new shapes to our flame quite fast without it looking too erratic. The main idea is just that we want to keep the wave motion and the volumes in mind when we do this. Otherwise we can get a flame that flickers and strobes more than looking like a natural moving flame. Right, and then here now, because I'm kind of cutting away from this thing, we can add this as a little ember. And then this part here now is gonna kind of go up like this. And make sure to play your animation and step it back and forward so you can see that everything is moving correctly. I'm gonna keep going with this bobbing action down there. So now for the next frame here, because I'm noticing that the flame has become quite thin here, we want to introduce some more volume down here. So something more like this. So I'm gonna cut off this part here. To not make this look like it's popping, I'm gonna add a big ember here. So even though we're making an erratic movement, we want to keep in mind where our last drawing was. So we have our last drawing down here. So this part, we don't want to put it way up or move it around too much, because the eye needs to see where these parts are coming from. And then we make sure to always check that it's working. And for this small part here, I'm gonna make it kind of speed up a bit as it gets smaller. And I'm gonna add this little small piece here, flying away. And same with these, I kind of want them to travel in a wave motion. Or sometimes they can kind of curve outwards as they're traveling, because of the cold air flowing over them. And when I do these pieces flying away, I sometimes want to drag certain parts of them. So in this case, I'm gonna make the edge of it move a bit slower than the outer part. So this part here is moving way faster than the parts here. And that will kind of help sell that idea of the turbulence pushing on it. And then this part here, I want to add that as a ember too. And you can see down here the bobbing that is happening. So I'm not making it go too fast where it's going like this, but I'm giving it just a slight bit of easing, kind of like that. And then let's make our last drawing here. So keeping the wave motion in mind, now the wave is going like this. So this big part here will be released from the flame. And then our main wave motion. So let's see how this is looking. And then I'm gonna add these embers here. I'm gonna make this one twisting this way. Okay, so this is what I have this far. Now I'm gonna go back and add in these details. So like I did before, I'm gonna make these kind of curve upwards and speed up a tiny bit and dissipate. You can make them break up into smaller pieces like this. But don't make too many pieces, because then your animation will look quite messy. All right, and then if we want more embers now, we can go in at random places now and add in these little embers coming from the side. And we can do it quite sporadically, but we just want to make sure that we ease them out. And I try to vary my easing on these embers. You don't want them all to dissipate equally as fast or at the same time, because then it will look quite unnatural. And you will have frames where you might not have any embers and frames where you have a lot of them. Okay, so this is how it's looking. So if I want to make this any longer, I'll just apply the same principles and keep doing what I was doing before. But now we're going to take a look at how to add the shading. So here I have the traced shading from the style frame. So with the shading, it's kind of similar to what we were doing before, but now we're working inside the flame. So we want to add some turbulence and some different behavior inside the flame to give it a bit more life. So to do that, I will turn on onion skinning, and then I'm gonna make this shading kind of follow the main movement of the flame. But usually with the shading, I tend to play around a bit more and make it a bit more aggressive than the main shape. This is because it's contained inside it, so it won't really have that same strobing effect if it's too crazy. So I'm gonna apply the same principles here of volumes traveling upwards, but in some places I might take things away, like I did here. And when one part is traveling upwards, I might make one part traveling downwards like this. And we want to keep in mind the volume of the flame, that the flame has volume going like this. So we don't want to make our shading look too straight or too flat. And then down here we have the shading kind of breaking up. So I will make these holes here kind of travel upwards a bit. And I will also make them quite erratic. So getting smaller and bigger, but I don't want to overdo it. So as you can see in between these two frames here, the shading changes shape quite aggressively. Okay, and then we're gonna go to the next frame. But notice that I'm keeping these main elements here, kind of following the same movement of the flame. Right, then I'm gonna keep going here. Always make sure to watch what you're doing, play it back, and use the onion skinning. And then I'll introduce these small elements too, randomly like that. And then for the next frame here, I just want to make sure that I'm adding a little easing on these small elements. And we go to the next frame. All right, so here we have our rough flame. So now if we want to make this flame look like our style frame, we can go ahead and grab the color, and then we can either make a new layer and go over and trace each drawing, with the correct color. And then fill it in. Or if our rough is really tight, we can just go ahead and use the rough for our cleanup. So we can click on the keyframe here and then apply the color to what we have selected. And now we can go in and clean up any small holes like that that will prevent us from filling it in, and fix any form of lines that doesn't look good. And once we've done that, we can go ahead and fill it in like that. And then for the shading, we can go ahead and do the same thing. And now I'm gonna draw outside of this main shape here, and I'll show you why in a little bit. Like this. And then we have our final color that will go inside here. Okay, so now we want this shading to only show up inside the main shape. So to do that, we will grab our main layer here. So this red layer, we'll grab this, right click and duplicate. And then we'll take this duplicate and put it on top of our shading. And then right click again and click mask. So that will mask this shading with our main shape. And we want to do that once we have cleaned up everything. Otherwise, now you can see that we only have one frame, and now suddenly our rough shading is just showing up where it's intersecting with the main lines here. So we do that once every frame is done. And then we just do the same thing for each frame. Okay, so that's it on how to animate a flame by hand.